The initial fabrication was diminutive. In fact, it was so diminutive that I nearly missed it. We were dining at a bustling Italian restaurant in the city, the type with checkered tablecloths and lamps that were affixed to vintage wine bottles. Our 6-month anniversary was approaching. Travis was recounting his day, which included the replacement of a malfunctioning HVAC unit on the 34th floor of a corporate high-rise. He's employed as a maintenance technician for a substantial commercial real estate organization, which provided him with a consistent income and favorable benefits. Although it was not glamorous, it was honorable labor, and I held him in high regard for it. Then he stated, Wes, the entire server room was down. In order to restore it to its operational status, my team was required to collaborate with the IT personnel. An actual discomfort. Halfway to my mouth, my utensil ceased to function. Who is your team? I inquired with a gentle tone. I was under the impression that you typically worked independently or with a single colleague. Okay. There was no lapse in his performance. Taking a large swallow of Chianti, he waved his hand dismissively. Wes, management is restructuring, assigning me additional responsibilities. It is a positive development, Sky. I relinquished it. It is possible that it was advantageous. It is possible that I was excessively analytical, a consequence of dedicating 10 hours each day to the development and debugging of code. In my universe, a single erroneous semicolon could cause an entire system to malfunction. Precision was of paramount importance. However, this was the real world, a realm of relationships and complex human emotions. Maybe in his world, my team was a casual term that simply meant me and the other guys I work with. Consequently, I smiled, squeezed his hand across the table, and expressed my admiration for him. The lie had been sound, much like a small seed. I was unaware at the time that it would develop into a forest so dense that it would suffocate all that I believed to be real. I am Skylar Young. I am a modest, unassuming woman who works from home, and this is particularly true for my husband's family and the outside world. The unspoken, official narrative they have developed for me is that I am a glorified data entry clerk who spends the day in her pajamas, playing on the computer, while her hardworking spouse, Travis, goes out and conquers the world. They regard my remote position as a hobby that, fortunately, is sufficiently compensated to avoid becoming an undue burden, rather than a career. They believe that I am naive, gentle, and likely not very intelligent. I am a senior software engineer at a top cybersecurity firm located in Silicon Valley. I am responsible for a team of 12 exceptional developers who are dispersed across 3 continents. They imagine that I am playing on the computer, but in reality, I am responsible for the design and implementation of intricate security architectures for Fortune 500 companies. And the salary they assume scarcely covers groceries. It is sufficient to purchase the Italian restaurant, the building in which it is located, and likely the entire city block without hesitation. Additionally, there is an additional, considerably more substantial secret. I was a young lady who experienced a complete loss of everything prior to becoming a software engineer. My parents were fatally injured in a head-on collision with a drunk motorist when I was 19 years old. They were diligent, upright individuals who had meticulously devised a plan for my future. The life insurance payout was substantial. However, it was bleeding money, and for an extended period, I was unable to handle it. I allowed it to remain, a somber reminder of my sorrow. Then, one day, a kind man named Mr. Abernethy, a financial advisor whom my father had trusted, set me down. He advised me that the most effective method of paying tribute to my parents was to foster its expansion rather than allow it to remain stagnant. As a result of his advice, I made an investment. I acquired knowledge regarding markets, venture capital, and calculated risks. The cold, hard logic of numbers provided an outlet for my sharp and all-consuming mourning. Through a series of intelligent, aggressive, and occasionally fortunate investments in technology firms, the insurance money had been transformed into a portfolio valued at several $1 million by the time I was 25. No one was aware. Travis and my companions are not among them. I had grown wary of the superficial fascination that money elicited when I encountered him. I desired for someone to recognize me as Skylar, the nerdy girl who wept during sad movies and adored old sci-fi novels, rather than as Skylar, the walking trust fund. Travis was a refreshing change of pace. He was employed as a maintenance worker. He repaired objects with his hands. He was uncomplicated, unassuming, and he amused me. He never inquired about my financial situation, and I never responded. I informed him that I had a modest nest fund and a small inheritance that would cover my student loans. He accepted it without hesitation. A year later, we exchanged vows. I resigned from my office position in order to pursue a completely remote career, a decision that was both personally convenient and professionally strategic. Travis was informed that I desired to alleviate his financial burden due to the stability of my new remote position. I had offered to manage the expenses for a while, presenting it as a gesture of kindness. You could concentrate on saving money and perhaps begin the workshop you have always intended to conduct. He was ecstatic. It was perceived by him as my encouragement of his aspirations. I envisioned an existence in which our finances were never a source of contention and in which he would never feel intimidated or emasculated by my income. It appeared to be the ideal solution. Our initial residence was an endearing bungalow situated in a tranquil Atlanta suburb. The mortgage was in both of our names, but the payments were drafted from my account. I concealed the fact that I paid the down payment from my savings, allowing him to believe it was a joint endeavor funded by my nest egg. The arrangement was uncomplicated and uncluttered. It was flawless for a period of time. A slow, creeping flood was the catalyst for our downfall, rather than a singular event. In a literal sense, the river near his parents' residence overflowed its banks as a result of a succession of storms that struck Georgia. Their modest single-story residence, which they had occupied for 40 years, was completely destroyed. Travis's parents, Clara and Vernon, were left with only the clothing on their backs and a few salvaged photo albums. Naturally, they relocated to our residence. Our bungalow, which consisted of 2 bedrooms, abruptly appeared to be exceedingly diminutive. Clara was a woman who occupied a significant amount of space, both physically and emotionally. She was an expert in the art of the backhanded compliment. She would observe me at my desk and say, "Oh, Skylar, it's so wonderful that you can just sit here in your yoga pants all day." Vernon's disapproval was palpable in the room, despite his silence. I regret that I did not have such a relaxing job when Travis was growing up. He would grunt in response to my pleasantries and gaze at my dual monitor setup as if it were an alien artifact. They wept over the loss of their residence, and my heart grieved for them. The worry was inscribed into the lines around Travis' eyes, and I could see the toll it was taking on him. I desired to rectify the situation. I have consistently been a person who seeks to resolve issues. I am responsible for the repair of malfunctioning code in my position. I aspired to repair the hearts that had been broken throughout my existence. That was the moment when the concept struck me. A grand, generous, and astonishingly stupid concept. What if we collectively construct a residence? One evening, I made a proposal. The tiny dining table was crowded with the 4 of us, who were each consuming a slice of a takeout pizza. Clara had recently concluded a lengthy, weeping monologue regarding her degraded rose garden. Travis gazed at me with bewilderment. "Home. We are scarcely able to fit in this one. Sky. There is no way we can afford to construct a residence." "I have been saving," I stated, selecting my words with caution. "My work has been proceeding smoothly. I have received several substantial incentives. I believe that I am capable of accomplishing this task. A spacious residence that accommodates all individuals. A spacious yard, a suite for your parents, and a new beginning for all of us." A combination of shock and suspicion was evident on their features. Clara's pupils contracted. "Are you able to afford that?" From the act of typing, this is the point at which Travis's minor lie began to develop into something monstrous. He appeared to be defending my honor as he swelled out his chest. Indeed, she is capable of doing so. We can, he corrected, placing his hand on my shoulder. Mom, my career is also thriving. I informed you that I was awarded a significant promotion. Senior project manager. I gazed at him with my mouth slightly open. Senior project manager. He had never mentioned that to me. The HVAC technician had abruptly transitioned into a corporate executive. Nevertheless, Clara and Vernon were beaming. The senior project manager, their son. That made sense to them. That was a legitimate occupation. The money I earned from typing was now merely a supplement to their son's extraordinary success. Travis, why did you not express this earlier? Clara's disposition was immediately ameliorated by her cheerful squeak. A project manager? Vernon, did you hear that? Travis simply beamed, a smile that was confident and effortless, but did not extend to his eyes. He exerted pressure on my shoulder. I refrained from speaking due to my astonishment and my fervent desire to ensure the happiness of all individuals. I reciprocated with a smile. At that instant, the narrative was irrevocably established. Travis's accomplishments would be commemorated by the new residents. I would be the modest, supportive wife who assisted with the finances. I discovered the ideal property, a stunning 2-acre site in a gated community located to the north of the city. I employed the architect, a woman who is renowned for her contemporary farmstead designs. I spent weeks with her, meticulously reviewing blueprints and selecting each tile, finish, and light fixture. I desired it to be flawless. A residence that is so luminous and aesthetically pleasing that it would dispel all obscurities. A substantial 6-figure sum was promptly withdrawn from my investment account to serve as the down payment. Travis believed me when I informed him that it was the final item in my inheritance. The home was a complete work of art. 6,000 square feet of open, concept living space, including a gourmet kitchen, a spacious master suite, and an entirely separate in-law apartment with its own entrance and kitchenette. We relocated, and for a brief period, it appeared to be a fantasy. However, visions have a tendency to transform into nightmares. Travis embraced his new identity with an unsettling comfort. When he returned home, he would discuss synergizing with marketing and stakeholder meetings. He spent money on new suits. He began to refer to my state of the art home office, which serves as the focal point of my entire professional life, as Skylar's little nook. I was the on-site staff, and his parents treated the property as their own personal resort. Clara would leave passive, aggressive notes on the counter, such as, Skylar, the dishwasher needs to be emptied. I would do it, but my back is aching from the stress. Vernon would walk through the home, pointing out imaginary flaws. This crown molding appears to be slightly uneven. Son, he would say to Travis, who would nod sagely and vow to have his men inspect it. My presence was rarely acknowledged, and my opinion was never sought except when a task was required. I owned the residence. The investments I had made and the code I had written were responsible for the payment of every square inch. However, I had been reduced to a ghost in my own home, a silent benefactor whose contribution was not only disregarded but actively obliterated. I resided in a society that was constructed on the foundation of Travis's fabrications and my financial resources. I persisted in convincing myself that it was worthwhile to witness his happiness and the restoration of his family's sense of security. I was so frightened of being alone and so haunted by the silence of the home after my parents' passing that I was prepared to tolerate any level of noise, even if it was the grating sound of their disrespect. Then the final nail in the coffin arrived, accompanied by a sneer and a designer suitcase. Sasha, Travis's sibling. Sasha was an exact replica of her mother, except that she was younger, more intelligent, and more slender. She was employed in the payroll department of a mid-sized organization and exuded the unwarranted confidence of a CEO. She exuded an aura of sophisticated success, despite the fact that her life was a mess, marked by a series of unsuccessful relationships and bad debts. She arrived for what was intended to be a weekend visit after her most recent companion evicted her. The foyer, the glistening hardwood floors, and the soaring ceilings were all in her line of sight as she entered. She did not appear impressed. Rather, she appeared possessive. She said, "Wow, Trav," completely disregarding me as I stood by the door. "You have accomplished a great deal for yourself. I was aware that you possessed the ability." Sasha endeavored to undermine me at every opportunity over the course of the subsequent days. She would reorganize my kitchen by placing items in illogical locations and then groaning heavily when I was unable to locate the salt. She would enter my office without knocking, observe the displays that were cluttered with code, and inquire, "Are you still playing your tiny computer games, Skylar? Do you ever experience boredom?" She was adept at fostering discord. She would always cast a sideways glance at me as she would draw Travis aside for hushed, conspiratorial conversations. Travis would become distant and irritable subsequent to these conversations. He began to query my expenditures, which was ironic given that it was my money. Sasha was suggesting that it may not be a wise decision to purchase a new vehicle at this time. "Sky," he would say, alluding to the dependable Honda I had acquired to replace my 10-year-old Civic. "We must reduce our expenditures." We. The weekend sojourn extended into a week and then two. Sasha did not exhibit any indications of departing. She had seamlessly assimilated into the household dynamic, adding to the chorus of voices that were telling me I was inadequate. The breaking point did not occur with a loud explosion. Rather, it was a quiet, condescending statement that ultimately shattered my meticulously cultivated tolerance. I was preparing coffee in the kitchen. It was the morning of Tuesday. I was required to deploy a critical security upgrade by noon, which was a significant project deadline. My mind was ablaze with lines of code as I had been awake since 4 a.m. Sasha entered the room while donning one of my silk bathrobes. She rested against the marble island, poured herself a glass of orange juice, and observed me for a brief period. She began, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You know, I've been thinking. Travis is burdened by the responsibility of managing this magnificent residence in addition to his substantial employment. Additionally, the residence is entirely filled due to the presence of Mom and Dad." I simply nodded, my attention fixed on the trickle of the coffee machine. I concurred, my voice remaining unmoved. "It is a substantial residence." "Indeed," she replied, as if I had resolved the matter for her. "Consequently, I have resolved to remain in place indefinitely in an effort to assist." She took a gentle drink of her juice, acknowledging that family must remain united. "I believe that in order to ensure that everything is in order, it would be most beneficial for you to secure your own residence. Some sort of diminutive dwelling, something that is more manageable for you. Travis would be relieved of a significant amount of stress. The universe ceased to exist. The dripping coffee, the hum of the refrigerator, and the birds chirping outside the window. All of this fell mute. I turned and gazed at her with a profound intensity. At her entitled posture, her smug face, and her wearing of my robe in my kitchen, she was directing me to exit. And something within me, which had been dormant for years, finally awoke. It was the aspect of me that had endured an unfathomable loss. The aspect of me that had constructed a fortune from embers. It was a quiet, cold, and absolutely furious aspect of me. I was amused. It was not a joyful sound. It was both brittle and piercing. "Are you directing me to depart?" Sasha was taken startled by my response. "Indeed. It is the rational choice. For Travis's sake." The words tasted like poison as I repeated, "For Travis' sake." A single white hot point of clarity emerged as the years of quiet resentment, of biting my tongue, and of allowing the falsehoods to accumulate around me coalesced. I had completed my task. I said, "Sasha." My voice was perilously composed. "Permit me to inform you of the rational course of action. It is logical that the individual who purchases the property is entitled to occupy it." Her grin was shaky. "What are you discussing?" "Travis is responsible for the purchase of this residence." "Does he?" I placed my coffee mug on the counter with a loud clink. "That is quite amusing. I have a bank statement that indicates that I made a DAR 3,000 hun down payment. Additionally, I possess an additional statement that indicates a recurring monthly payment of $7,528 for the mortgage, which was debited from my personal checking account. Travis is not authorized to access this account. Sasha's complexion became paler. She appeared uncertain for the first time. You are not telling the truth. Who am I? I exited the kitchen and proceeded directly to my office. She followed me, anxiously placing her bare feet on the hardwood floors. The screen of my primary monitor illuminated the dimly lit room as I accessed my online banking portal. Navigating to the mortgage payments, I encountered a lengthy list of transactions, each of which was identical 7,528.20 for PUN. Finally, I retrieved the confirmation of the wire transfer for the down payment. The figures were all present, unmistakable and severe. This house is mine, I declared, turning in my chair to face her. The land upon which it is constructed, the roof that provides shelter, and the marble countertops that you enjoy reclining against. All of these were acquired by me. Travis contributes to this household by paying his cell phone bill and his vehicle payment. That concludes the matter. Travis, Clara, and Vernon entered the office at that moment, attracted by the sound of my elevated voice. What is transpiring within this establishment? Travis inquired, his gaze alternating between his sister and me. Sasha discovered her voice. Travis, she is deceiving you. Please inform them that she is not telling the truth. Inform them of the manner in which you acquired this residence using your substantial salary. All eyes were directed toward Travis. He resembled an animal that had been cornered. He forced a hard inhalation, his meticulously crafted world tumbling down around him. He was unable to deny the evidence on my screen and confess the truth to them. Therefore, he took the course of action that cowardly take. He became enraged. Skylar, what is this? He blustered, gesturing wildly at the monitor. Are you attempting to cause me to feel embarrassed in front of my family? Are you attempting to present yourself as a prominent figure? Standing up, I stated, I am not attempting to create the impression that anything is amiss, Travis. I am merely stating information that you have concealed from them for the past 2 years. Travis, inform them. Inform them that you are not a senior project manager. Inform them that you are a professional who specializes in the repair of air conditioners. Inform them that the suits, the stories, and the entire life you have fabricated are untrue. Clara exhaled. Travis, is this accurate? Travis's visage was a mask of humiliation and wrath. He gazed at me with hatred that was unadulterated. He was unable to refute the facts, so he turned his attention to me. You see. Do you observe her behavior? I am perpetually striving to maintain dominion over my surroundings. I am unable to continue living in this manner. He abruptly exited the room. He returned a moment later, pressing a piece of paper into my hand. My eyes perused the words at the top of the page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce documents. He had already completed the drawings. He must have been formulating this for weeks, likely with Sasha's support. They were merely anticipating the appropriate moment to surprise me, to force me to leave with what they believed would be a modest settlement, thereby retaining the grand mansion and the life I had supported. Sign it, he demanded with a scowl. I desire your departure. The residence is jointly owned by both of us. We will sell it, divide the profit, and conclude our relationship. Clara and Sasha were now beaming, a triumphant and venomous duo. They believed that they had prevailed. They believed this to be their checkmate. They were unaware that I was about to turn the entire board. A peculiar tranquility enveloped me. This concluded the matter, the conclusion of the ruse. I stared at the documents, then up at Travis's irate countenance and his family's smug expressions. I grinned. Expression that is authentic and sincere. All right, I replied. Their grins dissipated. They anticipated a confrontation, weeping, and a plea. They were not adequately equipped to receive acceptance. All right? Travis struggled to speak. Certainly. All right, I replied. I will sign. However, I am not interested in selling the property. Your parents would find that to be excessively disruptive. Are you sure you adore this residence? It is recommended that you retain it. They gazed at me in a state of complete bewilderment. This was not a component of their strategy. I have one condition. I continued, my intellect working at an unprecedented pace. The plan was evolving, its simplicity being both elegant and flawless. I will execute the papers and execute a quitclaim deed, which will eliminate my name from the house title. In return, you are required to refinance the mortgage in your own name. I would like my identity to be entirely removed from the loan. The residence and the debt that accompany it will be entirely yours. Travis's eyes were illuminated by avarice. Acquire the residence and eliminate me. It exceeded his expectations. The $7,500 monthly mortgage was a terrifying figure, but in his delusion, which was likely fueled by his own lies, he likely believed that his senior project manager salary could accommodate it. Alternatively, it is possible that he was simply not thinking at all. He responded promptly, "That's fine," before I could reconsider my decision. Completed. I will contact the bank tomorrow. My smile widened as I replied, "Perfect. No, if you will excuse me, I have a security patch to deploy." I retreated to my desk, turned my back on them, and commenced typing. They remained in silence for a brief period, and then they withdrew, murmuring to one another. They believed that the conflict had concluded. They could not have been more misguided. The genuine conflict, my conflict, had only recently commenced. For the first time, I was the one tugging the strings, and the subsequent 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. I appeared to be the defeated wife, silently packing my possessions into boxes. I was compliant, cooperative, and heartbreakingly sorrowful, a performance that appeared to delight Clara and Sasha to no end. They would pass by the guest room where I was sleeping, peering in to observe me folding clothing, and they would whisper to each other with poorly concealed glee. In the interim, Travis was engaged in a mission. He was a man consumed by a sense of purpose, spending hours on the phone with the bank. He was so captivated by the prize, the house free and clear of me, that he neglected to read the fine print. He refrained from conducting the calculations. He has just observed a finish line and has immediately begun to gallop toward it. Based on the combined household income we had when we initially submitted our application, as well as any inflated salary he had claimed on the new application, he was approved for the refinancing. The bank was pleased to comply, as my account had a lengthy history of timely payments. I was conducting my own telephone communications while he was preoccupied with paperwork. First, I met with Evelyn, my counsel, who was a sharp, no-nonsense woman. I provided a comprehensive account of the circumstances, omitting no information. She did not even blink when I reached the section that discussed Travis's falsehoods and my secret fortune. She replied with a precise classic tone over the phone. "All right, Skylar, what we do is as follows. His Achilles heel is the refinancing and the quitclaim deed. We permitted him to possess the residence. However, the contents of the residence are a distinct matter. Was the furniture and appliances purchased by you?" "Every last piece," I verified. "I possess receipts for all items, including the Italian leather sofas, the Sub-Zero refrigerator, and the forks in the kitchen drawer." Evelyn's chuckle was a desiccated, appreciative sound. "This is exceptional. Afterward, it becomes your personal property. They are not marital assets, as they were all acquired using your premarital funds. We will facilitate what I refer to as a rapid asset liquidation." I then contacted Atlanta's preeminent high-end consignment store and a team of professional movers who specialized in discreet, overnight jobs. The day of the closing was a surreal experience. We all convened at an antiseptic title company office. Travis was virtually ecstatic. His signature was a messy scrawl of triumph, and he signed the mountain of documentation with a flourish. Subsequently, I executed the quitclaim deed, which served as a formal waiver of all my property rights. Travis was unable to conceal his smug smirk as I moved the paper across the table. He extended his hand, saying, "Well, Skylar, bah." There are no resentments. I examined his hand, but I refrained from accepting it. I simply grinned. Travis, there is none at all. Take pleasure in the residence. You have achieved it. The complete family attended a celebratory dinner at a steakhouse that was exorbitantly priced that evening. Sasha shared a photograph on Instagram depicting the four individuals raising champagne flutes with a slab of tomahawk steak in the foreground. The caption read, "To fresh starts and the elimination of unnecessary baggage. Ha good but only our family first." My team arrived immediately upon their vehicle exiting the driveway. The movers, a group of 6 silent and efficient men, approached the home in a manner reminiscent of ghosts. The consignment specialists, 2 women with clipboards and practiced eyes, proceeded from room to room, labeling each item. The Persian rugs, the artwork on the walls, the high-end espresso machine, the Persian rugs, the Peloton bike, the 80-inch television, the dining room table, the recliners, the beds, the plates in the cabinets, and the light bulbs in the lamps. Each item that I had purchased was meticulously inventoried, wrapped, and loaded onto a substantial vehicle. The 6,000 square foot dream residence was completely demolished in just 4 hours. It was a shell that was vacant and reverberated. Travis, Sasha, Clara, and Vernon's personal possessions, including their clothing, inexpensive trinkets, and a few pieces of water, damaged furniture from their previous residence that had been stowed in the garage, were the sole items remaining. Travis and his family were unaware that my personal belongings had been relocated to my new residence earlier in the day. It was not a compact, manageable apartment. The penthouse in Buckhead, which boasted panoramic views of the Atlanta skyline, was awe-inspiring, spanning 3,000 square feet. I stood on my new balcony, taking my first genuine inhalation of fresh air in years, as the moving truck departed from the empty house. The city lights twinkled below me like a sea of fallen stars. I experienced no contrition, absence of melancholy, only a profound, purifying sense of tranquility. The family, who were ecstatic with their victory in Champagne, had resolved to prolong their celebration. Travis, who was feeling expansive and generous with his newfound wealth, scheduled a last-minute, week-long trip to the Bahamas the following morning. A suite at the Atlantis Resort, first-class tickets, the entire package. I am confident that he utilized his credit card to pay for the entire amount under the misguided assumption that his project manager's salary would suffice. Their suitcases were already packed when they departed immediately from the steakhouse festivity. The following 7 days were spent indulging in a lifestyle that was beyond their means, posting an endless stream of photos that included selfies on the beach, cocktails by the pool, and boastful pictures of their luxury suite. I observed the unfolding of their digital fantasy from the tranquility of my penthouse, where I sipped tea and established my new existence. I transferred a substantial portion of my liquid assets to a new set of accounts that are solely in my name. I transmitted my correspondence. I modified my telephone number. I eliminated all digital and corporeal connections that bound me to them. I was an apparition. Their return must have been a cinematic experience. I have a clear mental image of it. The taxi is ascending the lengthy, meticulously maintained driveway. The 4 of them, sun-kissed and hungover, are seen giggling as they carry their luggage to the front door. Travis, with a stately gesture, unlocks the door and swings it open, uttering a phrase that may be interpreted as, "Welcome home to our new kingdom." And then the calm, the silence of disbelief as they enter a vast, deserted foyer. The sound of their footfall reverberating on the unfinished hardwood floors. The confusion transforms into hysteria as they dash from room to room, each one as barren as the previous one. The living room, devoid of furniture, is only indicative of the sofa's former location by the indentations in the carpet. The custom cabinetry is left with gaping holes, as the kitchen is a cavernous space with empty cabinets and disconnected appliances. Their chambers were devoid of mattresses and bed frames, and their clothing was arranged in disorganized heaps on the floor. About 30 minutes after they arrived home, they received their initial furious, perplexed telephone call. It was an unknown number, but I was aware of its identity. I permitted it to be directed to voicemail. Pure, incoherent fury was conveyed in the message. Skylar, what is this? What is the location of all items? The settee, the television, my bed? What is the location of my bed? Please return my call. Call me back immediately, you lunatic. I deleted the message without a single emotion. Additional calls were received from Clara and Sasha. Each one is more amusing than the previous one. Then the text commenced. Accusations of theft, threats of litigation, and profanity. One by one, I blocked their telephone numbers. A month passed, a month of tranquility and beauty. I acclimatized to my new existence. I discovered a new favorite coffee shop, visited the parks in the vicinity of my building, and reconnected with old acquaintances whom I had neglected. I performed exceptionally well at work, dedicating my newly vitality and clarity to my assignments. I experienced genuine happiness for the first time since my parenting, rather than mere contentment. I was unoccupied. On a dreary Wednesday afternoon, the inevitable transpired. A number that I did not recognize rang on my phone. I responded to it out of fascination. A Skylar. Travis was the individual in question. His voice was distinct. The wrath had vanished, and it was replaced by a thin, desperate whine. Is that correct? I responded with a composed and even tone of voice. Sky, we must engage in conversation. He paused, and I could hear his trembling breath. I received a letter from the bank. The initial mortgage payment is due all. It is 7,500 euros. I was under the impression that you had advanced payment or something. Skylar, I am unable to pay this. I receive less than half of that amount each month. The delusion had finally encountered reality. The senior project manager was compelled to examine the pay stub of his maintenance man. That appears to be a personal issue, Travis. I replied in a composed manner. Is this a personal issue? His voice cracked as he shrieked. You inflicted this upon me? You deceived me. You were aware that I was unable to finance it. Travis, I did not deceive you. I replied, my voice as frigid as ice. I presented you with a choice. You were so eager to rid yourself of me that you neglected to consider the consequences. The documents were signed by you. You asserted your comprehension of the terms in the presence of a notary. The residence is yours. The debt is yours. That was the agreement. However, the furniture. Everything was stolen by you. Oh, it was not theft. It was the repossession of my personal property, which I had acquired with my own funds prior to our marriage. Should you decide to pursue that absurd allegation, my attorney has access to all of the receipts. However, Travis, I must caution you that if you attempt to prosecute me in court, I will be compelled to submit a financial disclosure. I believe you would prefer that your family not be aware of the genuine reason I was able to purchase that property. The other end of the line maintained an extended period of silence. I possessed him. The final checkmate was the prospect of disclosing my true wealth and the full extent of his pitiful lies. What am I expected to do? He whispered, a man who was shattered. For the first time, I felt a sliver of pity for the man I once believed he was, rather than for Travis. I don't know, I said. You are a project manager. Investigate the matter. I terminated the conversation and permanently blocked his telephone number. The gated community's nosy residents informed me of the slow motion car crash that ensued. Travis neglected to make the initial mortgage payment. The second. The foreclosure notice was a stark white flag of surrender, affixed to the front door of their large, vacant house. It appears that Clara and Vernon had withdrawn their entire retirement assets to cover the cost of the Bahamas trip and to assist Travis with what they believed would be legal fees filed against me. They were left with nothing. The final karmic frosting on top was provided by a former colleague of mine, whose organization utilized Sasha's payroll services. Sasha had been apprehended for embezzling funds from her employer in an effort to sustain her lifestyle. She was promptly terminated and was confronted with felony allegations. The residence was seized by the bank as far as I was aware. Travis, Sasha, Clara, and Vernon were compelled to relocate to a two-bedroom apartment in the most undesirable neighborhood of the city. The apartment was characterized by its perpetually backed up plumbing and the presence of vermin. It appears that the tension, blame, and sheer misery of their new reality became too much for them. One evening, their downstairs neighbor reported a significant altercation to the authorities. The argument had extended beyond the confines of their apartment and into the street. It was a full-scale, four-person altercation. Fists flying, shrieking, and shouting. Public disturbance and assault charges were brought against each of the four individuals. The local news website published their mugshots, which were accompanied by a brief, scathing narrative about a family in crisis while they were fatigued and wounded. The article was observed by me. I observed their features, which were devoid of any pride or arrogance, and I experienced no emotion. There is no satisfaction, pity, or wrath. They were merely strangers, characters in a narrative that was no longer mine. The city lights were spread out before me as I sat in my magnificent penthouse telling my story. The laughter of my companions, the quiet solitude of my evenings, and the challenging work I did every day were all components of my story. I was required to traverse a forest of falsities in order to arrive at this location. However, I had ultimately discovered my exit. Leaving them was the most difficult thing I had ever done. However, what about reclaiming my life? That was the most straightforward. Additionally, I would not exchange it for anything.